You have to give before you get. Many times I've talked with people, it's like, well, what do I get out of this? You don't get anything till you give.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today, I have a very, very special guest, a much awaited episode with my lovely business partner, Jeffrey Jerome Mitchell. Jeff, welcome aboard, man.
Excited to be here and be one of your guests over the last few months. You've had some amazing guests. I'm excited to be one of them.
Absolutely, Jeff. You're going to be one of the special ones. By the way, the name Jerome was made up. I made up that name, so Jeff's middle name is not Jerome. But thank you for letting me rename you years ago, Jeff. It was one of my favorite things about you, your sense of humor and your humility and your no ego kind of lifestyle.
Especially when we did an interview of a person to work here and we had the name Jerome in the little box on the interview, and he actually said, "So tell me, Jerome, why do you like working for HIRECLOUT?" And then everybody else had an inside chuckle because it's not really my name, and he didn't know that.
That was literally my favorite interview of all time. Jeff, the interesting kind of segue. I talked about one of my favorite things about you and why we've been able to kind of get through so many recessions, which we'll also discuss. Tell me about what you have no ego kind of approach to life, and you like to laugh a lot. You seem to kind of go with the flow and are rarely stressed out. Tell me a little bit about your approach to life, first of all, which is more important than anything.
Well, as I've gotten older, and I'll be 65 in June.
Good Lord.
It's not worth the stress or the battle. So things that I years ago might have owned and held on to and be frustrated with and fought, I just kind of let go. And it goes with Stacy, my wife. If there's any issues or arguments, I won't allow it. I just won't get into it with her. I'll go, no problem. Like, I'll do it, and that's it. There's no conflict. Where in the past I might have stood my ground on an issue or been prideful.
So you've given in, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much. I've given in, given in, and given up. But when you let things go like that, as you're getting older, you have more perspective. It makes for a healthier life because you're not letting anything bring you down.
No, that's really great, Jeff. Tell me a little bit about your journey up to this point. You've been doing recruiting for 40 years, which is 41 years, I believe, which is exactly how old I am. So how did you get into the business? How does that even happen? Because I rarely have ever seen anyone go from college to recruiting as if it was a career path or career goal.
Wow. Well, in 1982, I was out of work. I had just been laid off as an accountant. My very best friend was an engineer. He decided to come to California. I was out of work. I said, "Hey, do you need a carpool buddy to drive with you?" And he said, "That sounds great." I came out. I interviewed for accounting jobs with a recruiting firm, and I was junior, only a year experience out of college, so I couldn't find any. But what they did say was they liked my attitude. I would call them in every day. "Have you found me a job yet?" And they liked my persistence. They said, "Do you want to try recruiting?" And I said, "Sure, I don't know what it is, but..." And I interviewed and met all the way up to the president, and got hired and started in, I interviewed with him in December of 82, and I started January 26th, 1983.
Jeff, was this an accounting and finance recruiting firm?
They did both. They did accounting and finance. They did programming, and they had one other. It might have been construction or something else, but they interviewed me for accounting and finance to place me. And when they couldn't place me, they saw something in me, and they said, "You want to try this?" And I said, "Sure." And then I got hired and went back east, bought a new car, drove out with my dad, and the rest is history. I've been here since January of 1983.
Mazda 3 stick shift?
No. At that time, it was a Honda Civic FE 5-speed.
Oh, nice. That little hatchback?
Yes.
I actually remember those. Nice.
Little hatchback, great fuel economy for driving across the country. So that was a big adventure coming here with my dad. Literally, we made it in here in 4 days.
Tell me about that accounting job, the first accounting job you actually had. What happened? Why did that end?
Well, I got a job out of college as an accountant for like a very large multinational organization. And frankly, the stuff I was doing was over my head at the time. I was doing journal entries for multi-billion-dollar entries of four or five different divisions of that company, and it was just I was making mistakes. I wasn't getting it. It was really hugely I was underqualified for what that was at the time. Because coming out of college is you learn it book smart, and then you're thrown into an accounting role that literally is managing billions of dollars, not managing the money, but accounting for it. And after about a year, oh, I don't know, a year and a couple months, they just said, "Hey, we don't see you. We don't see this position being a fit for you, and we're going to need to let you go." And I said, "Okay." And they gave me some severance. And let's see, that was Friday the 13th,
Wow.
1982. And then in the Thanksgiving of that year is when I came out with my friend Glenn. So a few months later. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Amazing. You've been in recruiting for 40 years. I'm guessing all of it is in IT. Not guessing. I think I know that.
It is.
Knowing
Yep.
you for 16 years.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
What was the toughest years? I'm guessing
Ooh.
you've seen quite a few recessions in 40 years.
Well, I mean, the toughest years for me were when I started because it was 1983. The economy wasn't booming. Not only wasn't the economy booming, is that I didn't know what I was doing in recruiting. So, and back then, you were given a list of file cards like this thick and alphabetized, and you had to go through and call those cards and call everybody on them. And back then, they didn't want to pay recruiters.
What's a call?
Oh, what's a call?
Oh, I don't think people are doing that anymore.
No, they're not. But that's all we did is cold call, and literally it'd be, "Hey, I've got a candidate with this background," and the response would be, "No agencies, we don't pay fees, uh, buy, click," uh, but a lot of no fees. That was a big answer back then. Sorry, no fees, no fees, no fees, and you just had to make hundreds and hundreds of calls to get a yes. And I knocked on a lot of doors, got hundreds of no's. But when things started picking up, I was really good at it because at that point, I learned to overcome objections. I learned to navigate through difficult situations where let's say I talked to a person within a couple weeks of me starting, then I would cycle back to the letter A in 3 months with the file
Wow.
cards, right? And then I'd call the same person and have a better call. So that was a very tough few years, 83 and 84, just because economy wasn't doing great, and then it started picking up.
You know what I've noticed, Jeff, over the last 16 years I've been in the business and through your stories is anytime someone's grown up in a recession, they typically end up doing really well long term. I've noticed the folks that came in the softest of markets typically fail pretty quickly after the market turns. I've noticed that quite a few times. I mean, you started in 83, 82, 83, you said tough years, or 83, 84.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I mean, I came in at the tail end of 2007 with, the Mitchell Group, which was the company you founded, and immediately the lights were turned off. And 2008 and 9 was treacherous, very, very challenging, right? Extremely
Yes.
difficult. And I mean, we just had to, my old saying, let's just survive to thrive, right? Which easier said than done. I mean, we struggled, but once the market picked up, it felt like it was cake.
It's true.
It felt like it was almost like, seriously, it's this easy, versus what you and I have seen, unfortunately, with really good people that have come in at the very soft market, and they kind of do an okay job. As soon as the market turns, it's very challenging, disheartening, and impossible for them to be good, you know?
Well, they never learned to do it in a struggle. So when we did it, when I tell you, literally, I would make hundreds of cold calls and get hung up on. When you can do that and be able to be resilient and pop up from that when things are easier, it's like, whoa. It's like taking off the training wheels of a bicycle. It's amazing.
Jeff, I know you and I are a little bit removed from that, but I have a challenge for you. Since we're in a recession now, can you make hundreds of phone calls a day now?
No, the problem is nobody answers their phone. So we back then, the calls we would make were to people that were at their offices, and they all had desk phones. So their desk phone would ring, and they would say hello, right? You get a switchboard maybe. Now people have cell phones. You might not get their number. If you call it, they don't know you. They'll hang up, or they'll block you, or they don't answer. It goes to voicemail. They don't call back. So calling is not a great way for first contact, but it's a great way after first contact to build relationships.
Nice. Jeff, when you started in 83, what type of roles were you filling? Tell me about some of the cutting edge, bleeding edge technologies back then.
Well, back then, IBM had their mainframe, and they had a series of mainframes that had come out actually in the early 70s. So in the 80s, they were big. They had big upgrades on their machines, larger, more capacity. They had like an IBM 3083 was one of their models, and we were placing people with COBOL programming skills, which back then was common business-oriented language, and it was batch programming, meaning that you had to put information in, wait for it to get computed, and then you get information out, like a batch in and a batch out. And then what got hot was IBM developed a database called DL1 and DB2 later on, which was relational, online CICS. So we were placing people within companies, like any type of company, as a programmer analyst, working on in-house business applications. That's what we did. And so
Nice.
we worked with banks, we worked with insurance companies, and I worked with Paramount Movie Studios, Universal, but it was always placing programmer analysts. Then I started placing DBAs as well, which was great. Then I also placed some managers and directors as time went on.
How about the 90s? What was cooking early 90s, mid 90s?
Well, let's see. Well, Mitchell Group started in 94. Let me think. Pegasus was 88 to 94. Um, those years we had a division within the Pegasus Group that did AS400, which was an IBM mid-range machine that companies that were not, let's say a furniture company might have an AS400 because they weren't able to buy a mainframe. They were too small, and PCs were not enough power. So IBM had a mid-range selection, AS400s, which are coded in RPG3, which you'll still see with some companies right now. I think Lamps Plus might have some
I hope not.
older systems. But so that's what I saw in the early 90s. Then as time went on in the 90s, they developed Sybase Power Builder and Visual Basic. So prior to that, there was IBM mainframes, IBM mid-range, and everything was tied to IBM. There was another company called Digital Equipment Corporation called DEC. They had a machine called VAX. They had their own programming language and their own database. So the key for this entire growth for IT over the last 20 years has been the ability of companies to move off mainframes and go to client server type settings, because then they were not beholden to IBM. So Dell comes on the scene, develops their own servers. Power Builder was a front-end language. Sybase was a back-end language. They could choose that. They could choose Unix. They could choose Microsoft's operating system. There was a lot more choices. So things became, before IBM, they owned the majority share. And the video we have actually in-house shows how IBM was tearing down their buildings because they weren't selling much anymore, and Microsoft was building brand new campuses in Redmond when that time was
Wow.
happening. It's pretty crazy.
How many recessions do you think you've seen approximately, Jeff?
Let's see,
We've seen 3 together at least.
probably between 4 and 5. Certainly when I started was recessionary. Probably later, maybe 89-ish, 90, things were slow. Things got okay. The 90s from 94 to 99 and 2000 were really good, especially 2000. In 2001, the faucet turned off and our business went down 80%. In 2000, we did 5 million in perm sales. In 2001, we did 1 million.
Wow, that's a hell of a drop off, and we won't even talk about the income drop off you personally had. It's pretty bananas.
We don't need to go there, but the that recession, let's see, 2001, and then things started picking up again in about 2004, and then went pretty strong until about 2008 when we hit that meltdown. 2008, 2009, then it started picking up again in 2010,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it was strong for a few years, and there were
Quite
blips,
a few years.
yeah, quite a few. There were blips along the way, but nothing really recessionary, right? Until now, and prior to that, COVID kind of put the brakes on for a while.
Nice. Jeff. One of the coolest stories I tell is when I came on board in 2007, knew nothing about the business. And my comment to you was, I'm happy to come on board, but are you gonna get out of the way to let me rebuild this thing? And that's a gutsy thing for someone to tell a successful business person who's built a business. And again, it's kind of tells us a lot about your character and the lack of ego, because you could have easily been an egomaniac and said, "Who the hell are you?" And then, of course, then I would not have rebuilt the
Yes.
Mitchell Group with you, and we wouldn't have scaled that
Yep.
and become an
True.
owner, and then we wouldn't have started HireCloud together. So I really applaud you for that, because that's an extremely rare gene in a person to be that level headed. I mean, your response was, "Yeah, that's exactly what I need," and otherwise, there's no way I'm coming on board, right?
Of course.
I had bigger, more clean opportunities, less challenging, less crunchy. I looked at that as a hot mess, and I meant that in the best ways. Like,
Yep.
here you have a brilliant guy who's built a successful business. It's kind of in a funky place, right? Like, I wasn't at that point in my career interested in something easy or something corporate, and I wanted to just kind of mess some stuff up and experiment. And I think within a very short time frame, we were looking to expand and bring on my Kaplan team, and then it all
Yes.
just went to shit in early 2008. But we hung in there with our sense of humor. So
Well, the one of the things that I think I said in the early interview process with you was I'm looking for a franchise player to build around. And because you're so into sports, I think that really hit a very positive nerve with you.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And look, it took a lot. It took a lot to come out of that recession and actually start rebuilding the Mitchell Group.
Yeah.
It ended up being actually a pretty successful company before we started HireClout with good old Jackie. Jeff, what is if you've got people listening, young people that want to get into the industry, what are some advice you would have for a recruiter that's interested in coming onto the industry?
Okay, a couple things. Well, actually, several. You have to give before you get. Many times I've talked with people, it's like, well, what do I get out of this? You don't get anything till you give. Things like if there's an event on a Saturday that you don't want to go to because you just don't want to go, it's your Saturday. You go because that could be the difference between you billing zero or $1 million, right? So many young people they want to know, well, what is this company offering me? That doesn't work long term, right? You have to give before you can get. Secondly, I think you have to have resilience and persistence and be okay with getting knocked down and getting right back up again because the business will beat you up. But it's like a gauntlet. Once you get through it, there's an amount of respect at the end of the tunnel, but you don't get that respect in the beginning of the tunnel because nobody knows you. So you got to get through that. Uh, got to work really hard. It's not a 9 to 5 job. If you
How dare you?
if
Don't
you
ever
want,
say those words again.
well, I know you like to leave around 4 Avetis for the golf game, but if people come in and put in an 8 hour day, it works in a great market. They'll be able to
Yep.
be reasonably successful. But in a recessionary market, they will starve. Literally, we just had a person working for us that was here for a number of months and wasn't able to close deals.
Jeff, question for you. That is definitely challenging and it could be frustrating. A lot of times, what I've noticed is when it gets tough, people actually do less, which is interesting, right? Because what the excuse is, and it's understandable, right? If you don't know better, is the excuse is, well, there's not a lot to do. Because in a busy market, you could work 15 hours a day, wouldn't be enough. But you kind of get by just working really hard, those 8, 9, 10 hours a day. In a tough market, people tend to do less
Hmm.
and they kind of almost like do less and less and less because there's not enough work, which we both know is the problem, right? Because it's opposite. You got to do more. What's your thoughts on that? And I almost want to say don't bother if that's the mindset. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, they do less and less because they don't think what they're doing matters because it's such a tough economy. So why do it? Why bother, right? The problem is that if that were the case for real business, like other businesses that thrive in recessionary times, they're looking to gain market share, beat out the competition, create something revolutionary. They're looking to do something special that other people are just kind of maybe throwing in the towel. So that mentality doesn't work. You have to create more. That doesn't mean you have to work more, but you have to create more. And typically, work will come with that, but it's not about coming up. It's not about saying, I'm going to put in 12-hour days. It's not necessarily going to matter because you could be hitting your head against the wall for 12 hours and then be even more frustrated. It's about being creative, coming up with different solutions. Maybe in the past you didn't meet people in person, you start going out and meeting people. Dinners, perhaps, taking them to a ball game, things that will work that you get too busy during a great economy that in a slower economy might give you a little bit of an edge.
Absolutely. Jeff, I'm sure this is the case for you, but over the years, one of the reasons our clients have loved us and have stuck with us and allowed us basically to survive recessions and even grow through recessions is because of our relationships with them. We care about them beyond the work, the money, the revenue,
Yes.
and we build those relationships. We continue to help them with nothing in return, and I think knowing that they want to help us grow, they want to help us win. In fact, some of those clients I'm thinking of, I'll thank them offline, but it's because of their great references that we just won that huge Inc. Partner Award, which was
Yes.
very challenging. I think they called 6 of our CTO VP clients and put them through the ringer just to vet us out as a great partner. I mean, stuff like that keeps me going because I know these people genuinely took time out of their day to recognize us for what we've done for them. Not 1 year, not anybody can do that, but long term. I mean, some of these people you and I have known for 15 to 30 years, you know?
I had a client in the past, Transamerica, and during the recession years ago, the manager, we had a great relationship. He goes, hey, you just made a few placements. Send me the invoices like today. I'll get them paid upon start date. I want to help you out. I want to help you get through this recession. So literally, we place somebody, I send them an invoice, it would get paid within a week. And that was because we had a great relationship, and that was a lot.
Huge, huge. And we've hired recruiters that were experienced and actually pretty good at their job. But one of the things we noticed in tough markets, they really struggled because they hadn't built relationships. And the funny thing is when they described what they considered a good relationship, it kind of made, I don't, not in a condescending way, but it made me kind of laugh because when I started listing the things I've done for my clients with nothing to gain, their faces just, they had an aha moment like, oh, that's a good relationship. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
relationship. Taking a call on a Saturday to help your client negotiate a severance package that has nothing to do with you is a good relationship. Helping them negotiate a salary for a job you didn't place them at. Meeting them for dinner when they were down on their, on their energy because they just found out that their company is closed. Whatever it was, those are the things that people remember, not the fact that you hired a handful of great engineers for them.
Inviting a client to my house to pick up a ping pong table.
All right. Giving them a place to sleep. Didn't someone sleep at your house or
No,
something?
no, that was with Johannes. uh, and he needed to store his stuff because he didn't have time to store it at LAX. He was flying back, and I said, just it was in Agora. I said, just store it at my house. And he brought his stuff over. He had a van, took it all out, stored it in a garage, and basically the joke was, hey, if you don't work with us, I have your stuff hostage.
Oh,
But
that's brilliant.
but I mean, it was great. He was very appreciative, and it didn't really cost me anything, and he loved it. I mean, I could call him right now, and we'd have a good laugh about it.
And this is who you are. I think you did that out of just literally just trying to help someone. You probably would do that for me, right? So even though there's no parking for you, there's place for mattress. My mattress is near
Plenty of parking at my mansion for you.
you. So where would the horses go? Where would the horses go?
That's a good old joke.
What were you talking about? Oh yeah. So guys, people give away Amazon gift cards as thank yous to client. Jeff gave a used ping pong table. I mean, this is the character that he is. So it's always been enjoyable to watch you do things differently.
It was a really good table though.
Yeah, I bet.
So he loved it. He played ping pong with his daughter for like 2 years every night.
What a cool gift. What a cool
Yeah.
gift. Do you have any leftover like ping pong tables or like a pool table for me?
No, I have a chaise lounge we're trying to get rid of on a garage sale, but
Pass.
and some file cabinets. Yeah, the people you're talking about were very transactional. So they thought they had good relationships because they got returned text messages or because they could talk to somebody in a normal workday. They didn't have relationships. and they didn't understand. So someone who's transactional, when they if they come to work here and we don't know it, they don't do well.
Well, one of the things that you and I teach, especially you, Jeff, is a lot of fun for me because it hit on a personal level. Is this was like 2008, 2009, actually, I think it was, and I had been invited by a mentee of mine to a USC MBA event, and it was a thank you dinner that he would kind of like, slowly had weaseled into a mentorship with me, and a great guy. And he invites me to this dinner. And of course, when he invites me, it's a month out. You always say,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
sounds
it's a
good in a
month out.
month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, why not? Why wouldn't I do dinner at 7 p.m.? Well, the day comes and it's 5 o'clock, and I'm like, I don't want to go. I have to leave work early. We're struggling. I have a 1 year old baby. I don't want to go to downtown LA. I want to be with my wife and baby. Sophia was, I think, like 6 months old or 8 months old. I couldn't wait to go hang out with her. I'm like, this is nuts. So I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go. You're like, yeah, you should go. I'm like, I'm not. I don't think I want to go. You're like, why not? It'll be fun. I'm like, look, I don't want to leave work early, drive in traffic an hour and a half to get to downtown to find parking to have chicken and wine. I don't need that. You go, just go. You never know what comes of it. Literally, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. You pushed me, right? It
I did.
was just like, you should go. You kept poking at me. Well, I go to this event, and this guy, Philip, great guy, had spoken very highly of me, and we had this great event. And there's like a line of people trying to talk to me. The guy had talked me up so much, and he ended up actually winning second place on his big USC project, I believe, if I remember correctly. But most importantly, the dinner was fine, but on my table was a gentleman that came up to me and started asking me questions. It was my friend Osped. So what ended up coming from that is it went from that to coffee to placing him to Lamps Plus. He had a great career there, became a product manager, then became a lead product manager, then he, referred so many people to us, and then he went somewhere else, and then we placed them somewhere else. Yeah, and then he went to, and he always found ways to give back and to get us involved in the companies he went to. Always referred his friends who were great guys, and vice versa. And then most importantly, forget all that. Who cares? Osped and I are very good friends, as you know. Osped actually has an office in our office, as you know, and he's a partner company. He does, yeah. Unfortunately, hopefully he's not watching. But now Osped and I, we do projects together. He is our consulting arm when we do small SOW projects. Hopefully, a
Yes.
very big one soon. But it's just that's such a small decision, right? At that moment, what would be the easy thing to do was to leave at 5:30, 6 o'clock, go to my home, hang out, have dinner with my lovely wife, and hang out with my baby. That sounds so much easier. And unfortunately, 95% of people would have chosen the easy out.
Yep.
Because that took no effort. Finishing up the day, no effort. Driving home from Woodland Hills to wherever we lived, West Hills or whatever, 5 minutes, no effort. Hanging out with my family,
What do I get out of it? What do I get out of
that
it?
what
Right?
do I get? And for me, it wasn't even what do I get? It was, this is a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what do I it's a lot of work for what, right? I'm gonna go there. I don't need dinner. My wife cooks lovely meals every
Yeah.
night. My baby's hilarious. But I'm really glad I went because again, with all this great business that came from it, who cares? I would have found it elsewhere. But the friendships that developed, not just from Osped, but just all the side friendships. Now our wives are friends. Our kids are very close friends. They go to the same school.
Yep.
You can't make this shit up, right? You can't write a movie about it. And I've got, not quite at that level, but I've got 15, 20 other stories like that. And that's what my career's been built on. One relationship with this great guy, Carlos, who taught me so much, ended up becoming 20 different relationships with 20 different companies. I mean, this is the stuff that I think if I were to say anything, even though this is I asked you for this, is I would say, if you're not going to be willing to do the hard work, I would not recommend doing the business, right? Because
Yeah.
at the
Correct.
surface level, the business is too difficult to do it linearly and do it very kind of like tick for tack, right?
You can't do it to just you can't just say I want to do it to help people.
Well, I've even seen people say, I'll go to this event, but I'm going to come in late the next day as if they're clocking in and out. And I'm just like, sure, I don't care if you come in at 11. Just don't say that. It's just such a weird thing. It's tick for tack. My 8 hours, I clocked in, I clocked out, which we don't even have that system, right? But I don't believe in that. And I know you don't. And I
No.
learned a lot from you from that, Jeff, right? And people never understood that, because I was the high flying, crazy, young, up and coming guy with the big network and the vision. They'd say, "Why do you work with Jeff? You guys are so different." I'm like, "Well, first of all, I learned a ton from Jeff. One, two, he has such a fresh perspective that I'm not used to. Right? I'm a hot blooded, crazy guy. You're calm, cool, collected. I like." As somebody said, I have a healthy ego. You have none, and it balances us out. You love doing accounting and finance, and I don't know how to spell accounting and finance. Yeah, sure.
You're I think the situation with Osbed on a financial level was really wonderful because it helped you jumpstart your career, and that wasn't you didn't know that would come from that. In terms of that led to so many avenues of success financially, which was great.
Yeah, it's funny. Even till this day, even though my wife's seen an incredible, obviously, life that we've built together, and she'll even say like, "Why do you go to this event in Pasadena? Like, what was in it for you? Almost is was there like a linear opportunity that that you saw?" Is how she's thinking. I'm like, "Honey, it doesn't work that way, right? Our business doesn't work that way. We don't go to get, or at least I don't, and I know you don't. I go to give, and sure, if things come along with it, wonderful. I'm happy to take it in. I always tell people that I try to help is listen, if I could do the business and I can win, that's great. I've got kids to feed, right? I got my boy Andranik, I got my girl Sophia, I got my wife Angela. So that stuff's important, but at the end of the day, I'm here to help and I'm here to have a good time, and I think that's also kept you and I enjoying the business where
You have
most
to.
people burn out. Most people I feel like burn out and they go the internal route because it's easier. If you're going to be linear, might as well do that route, right? Or they fail in the business because they're just not willing to do what it takes to be highly successful. And if you're not highly successful, it's just not worth it.
Not
We've
worth
talked
it.
about that. If you can't get to the whole 80-20 thing, if you can't get to the 20%, you got to run. It's just too difficult.
You can make money outside of this that would equal your draw with less headache.
Yep. Yep. Jeff, of all the great employees we've had, past and present, you and I have been blessed with hiring some incredible people. Some are with us, some are not. What's like three traits that you've noticed of people, not necessarily recruiters, but you could talk about recruiting that's made them highly successful?
I think one of the number one traits would be they were really great relationship builders, which goes without saying, but not everybody is. They were liked by people. They generally cared for people. They generally had an approach that they wanted to help or give before they got. So that relationship was number one. And I'm not going to name names, but we had the woman up in Seattle who worked for us at in her last year billed out over 800,000.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So and she had companies calling her because they loved her so much, and she wasn't a salesperson; she was a business person. So I think relationships are hugely important. I think also you have to be able to be okay getting rejected. You have to be okay being uncomfortable because you will get that. You'll get candidates and clients and situations that are a conflict. And if you get put down by everything like that, you won't have the stick to itiveness to do this. And some of the people I'm thinking of, they just were grinders. They would come in, they would work, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but they just very consistent, like a good football team, win or lose. They just came in and did the right things. And I think lastly is you have to be busy enough. You have to generate work, generate activity, generate creativity so you're not a clock watcher. People to me that watch clocks are running out of stuff to do. If you're really good in this business, you will have so much to do. You almost find you can't leave just because you've generated so much. I think I told you one of my recruiters years ago was at the office at 11:30 at night. And I said, "What do you?" I called him because I saw the phone light on because we had the same tie into my house. What are you doing? He goes, "Ah, I have so many emails to go through. I can't go home." I said, all right, when you're finished, don't worry about coming in. Come in whenever you want tomorrow morning.
You're like, come in 10 minutes later tomorrow morning.
That was my joke, but I didn't want to go there on your podcast.
Pick up some bagels.
But his approach to doing the business is what many people don't have. And he was very successful with this, that he just did the right things and generated his own work and had so much going on. When people leave here and they're spending the last 20 minutes tidying their desk up, it's just not the right approach. And these other people, I'm telling you, never did that. Right? They were star billers, and they did the right things.
Well, again, the world and business almost rewards you for being kind of a warrior and doing everything opposite. People a lot of times ask me like how I was successful in this business and my other businesses, and you already know the answer, Jeff. The answer is I always do opposite of what everybody else is doing.
Yep.
Right? Always. People are running away from real estate, I'm buying real estate. People are, I'm building real estate. People are selling stock, I'm buying them. People are laying people off, we're hiring great people. With that comes a price, right?
Yeah,
With
of
that
course.
comes a price. We're a little stubborn. We care a lot about our people, so sometimes we hold on to them. It's challenging. Because they're more than employees to us. Some of these people are team members and borderline families. So it's been challenging. But this is how we do. This is what keeps us happy. We were talking to one of our advisors, and we were frustrated because he was telling us, if you remember, Jeff, he was telling us how that other company's going so much faster. One of our competitors. And I'm a very competitive guy, right? And I played high school basketball, and I was highly competitive. I'm still till this day competitive when I play my wife and I versus my son and somebody, a nephew or something. So it drove me crazy that this person was growing faster. If you remember, I wanted to throw my chair through the glass because I'm like, what is this guy doing? And you were scratching your head, and I don't want to name him, but he said, "Hey, don't worry about it, man. That person's, at times miserable, right? Don't envy it. You guys are always happy." I'm like, "What are you talking about? We're walking around frustrated and pissed." He goes, "No, you're not, man. You're always laughing. You're always goofing off. You're always kind to each other. That's more important." I was like, you know what? He's right. Sure, winning is extremely important, but man, like, I don't want to be miserable.
Stress isn't worth it. He just had a major physical issue, this other gentleman. So it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I knew a lot of people, my father-in-law's friends, were all multimillionaires. They died young because of so much stress.
Yeah. Wow.
Meanwhile, he'll be 87 in a few weeks.
Good Lord.
And still works a little bit. Yeah, he just traveled to Europe for 3 weeks. But his friends
God bless
were
him.
70. God bless him.
That was one of my favorite stories. I'm going to tell it on this show, Jeff.
Go ahead.
It's too good. So speaking of God bless him, we're interviewing a gentleman, very young guy. He's probably 21, 22 years old, straight out of college. And he's interviewing with us. And this is like, God, it's got to be like 8 years ago.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jeff is interviewing. He goes, "Hey, where do you get your work ethics?" He goes, "Oh, my grandfather, he was in the military." And Jeff says, "Is he still alive?" And the guy goes, "Yeah." And Jeff goes, "God bless him." As if the guy was 90 years old. Jeff had an image of his grandfather, right?
Yeah, I did.
So you guys moved on from the conversation. I'm like, whoa, stop. So it's like, I had a feeling, you know me. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna bust Jeff's chops on this one. I said, Daniel, let me ask you a question. I was like, how old is your grandfather? And he thinks and thinks and thinks, and he says, 56. And you'd said, what? And you were pissed because I think you were 56 at the time, and it was hilarious to you because you were thinking this guy's 90 years old and he was a young guy,
Yeah. Well, when I heard the term grandfather, in fact, I was at the park near my house pushing Brian on a swing when he was about, I don't know, 6 years old, and it was 20 years ago. And a woman comes up and he wasn't behaving, and she looked at Brian and "Hey, you need to listen to your grandfather." And I was his dad, and I was like, "Oh boy!" And this was 20 years ago, Avetis. So I was like, 44.
That's crazy. Yeah, because I wouldn't even think you're 65 right now.
I know. She's just listening to your grandfather, and I'm like, I'm his dad. So
Oh,
that was a good story, though. Well, we all had a good laugh. We still remember it after all these years.
absolutely. What's a lesson you've learned through? You said 4 recessions. Honestly, I feel like I've been through 3 to 4, right?
Probably 5.
5, 6 recessions. What's like forgetting about recessions, like all these years, like what's a takeaway that you can give to business owners out there that are struggling, that are cranky in a way, and they feel like they're about to give up, right? Because it's nothing, it's not working. What would you say to them?
Well, I'll give you an interesting analogy. It's like somebody that's lost in the woods. And
Yeah.
because I read there's a couple books I read about people that I forget the name of the book. They were going through harrowing experiences, and someone was lost in the woods, and they just gave up, and they died. They didn't have it in them anymore. And maybe if they had walked 100 yards more, they could come out of the woods into a shopping center with a McDonald's, right? But they couldn't see it. So the biggest lesson I think is that it always will turn back. Whether it's good, it'll turn bad. If it's bad, it'll turn good at some point. You just have to know that, because if you don't believe that, you're going to get caught in the quagmire and the muck of it being bad, and it will never change, right? But it will always flip, and it's done that in 40 years. Recessions will flip into great times, and then when it's booming, you always have to have an eye. Well, this is gold rush is going to change at some point, when it becomes too easy. So I would say that's the biggest lesson I've learned, is you have to know and believe 100% that it will change. You just don't know when. I'm hopeful this one does next year, but you just don't know when, and you don't know how long the good times are going to go. So work your ass off in the great times.
And taper your excitement by living beneath your means, right? In
Yeah.
this business, Jeff and I have been highly successful and have some incredible years. We could have taken it to a level as if that's, as you would say, I've arrived, right? And taken our lifestyle to a level that we couldn't sustain. And I feel like when you step up too quickly, what it does, it creates a new lifestyle that I have to constantly maintain. And to do that is unnecessary pressure, not just on you, but the business and the family. Then it boils in, and so it's extremely important to know that you don't. I mean, look, you know me. I live a good life. I don't believe in saving every penny for what, to die, to for my kids not to work. I'm not interested in that. I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a little bit behind, but I want them to work and do what I did. So I do enjoy what, like, you love traveling. I love cars and a nice home and a nice vacation here or two. But like, I feel like we've always kept it reasonable so that we don't put that pressure on ourselves or then our employees and our families. So that's always a good advice.
Well, exactly. Well, one of the things in 2000, I did that. We had a great year. I built a mansion, not a mansion, a large house in Manhattan Beach. The next year, my income dropped 80%. So it was really a lot of
Ooh.
pressure. Yeah, man, actually more than that. I think it dropped 90%
Yeah, I
from one year
remember the
to the next.
numbers. It was ugly.
Interestingly enough, one of the guys in our building who unfortunately passed away, when I met him in his 80s, and I said, "What lessons have you learned in life? Give me the biggest lesson you've learned." His name was Burl. He said, "Whatever you do, don't step up your expenses and your lifestyle if you've had a good year." He goes, "You have to live even."
Well, I like that.
Live even, very evenly. Because he goes, "I've seen people, they started to make a lot of money, they stepped up their lifestyles, and they lost everything because they were over leveraged." He just said, and he was a great guy, he said, you just have to know that good times will sometimes end and bad times will always end, and you just have to stay level. And if you do that and don't go crazy, "Oh, I had a great year, I'm going to build a mansion." Well, that's great. The next year, the rug gets pulled out, and then you have to struggle. And that's that's what he told me. So good.
No, that's a really good lesson, man. Live even.
Live
I
even.
like that. I like that because it doesn't mean to hoard and don't spend, because that's not good, right? You end up looking back and say, "What did I enjoy?" I don't like that either. I like to enjoy it. And, money's got to flow and it's got to change hands, and it's got to be enjoyed. No, I like that. Jeff, what's your favorite book?
Actually, I think I'm in it right now. Well, it's an audiobook, but Multipliers, that first chapter for me was such an epiphany that I really enthralled by it. Another book I really like was Going from Good to Great.
I like it. Very good. That's a classic.
That was an outstanding book. But this one right now, even though it's early, just the first chapter just captivated me. So far so good. It's been great.
Good. Jeff, two more questions. One
Sure.
thing that I'll give you the easy one. Well, actually, that's the hard one. One thing that you love about me, and one thing that drives you freaking crazy.
Oof.
Live on the air, guys. We none of this was prepared.
Well, okay. I love that you take risks and you're not scared. When you wanted to be CEO of HIRECLOUT and I said go for it, you were all about creating and building and taking risks and not being fearful of that, which was great. That's what I love about you. I'm not going to use the word hate because that's too strong. What I despise, no, I'm kidding. What
What
what what
drives me
what
crazy?
drives me crazy is when sometimes, a lot of times, you might be unfocused or multitasking, and sometimes trying to focus on nine things at once,
I don't know what
and
you're saying. What are you
and
talking about?
sometimes those things get shortchanged. So that's, yeah. And the
I'm
only
doing it
thing is
right now, Jeff.
your legs not on the desk. But then it drives you crazy sometimes too. But you know it. But
Yes. No, no, for sure.
there's worse bad habits than that.
Yep, yep. Well, I appreciate that, Jeff. Jeff, this has been great, man. Many people, don't know all the stuff that you do here because you're a little bit more behind the scenes. You're here coaching, you're doing the legal stuff, accounting, finance, all
Yep,
the
yep.
stuff that doesn't get much glory, but it's much appreciated, and it's really cool to put you out here and let people see the kind of how we've stuck it out in our partnership and kind of kept grinding when things get tough.
16 years in 10 days, right?
16 years, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
October
Two companies,
22nd.
16 years, countless people we've hired,
Yep.
a lot of careers we've changed, hundreds of companies we've scaled, thousands of candidates we've placed. So it's been a fun journey. Let's 10x it.
Yeah, we've done good work out there. We've impacted a lot of people in a great way. Certainly their careers, where people can look up and say, like, well, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. What you
Yep.
did with your friend at that company, he walked out with a few $1,000,000.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jeff, where can people connect with you? Where can they find you?
They can find me with LinkedIn. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. My email is jeff@hireclout.com.
There it is.
That's probably the best way. And certainly LinkedIn, I respond. We can get connected. I can have a chat or even have a phone call if it's something they'd be interested in.
Connect with this guy. He's one of the best people you ever meet. Jeffy, thank you so much for being here, man. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we should do this more often.
I loved it. Have a good one. See you around the neighborhood.
And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avetis Antaplyan, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.